She clicked her wine glass against mine like she hadn't just gutted our marriage with 5 syllables. "It's just Miami," Sandra said. "Don't be dramatic. Just Miami, just her ex, just closure, just a few days, just emotional clarity." She dropped those words like grenades, one after another, with a smile so casual you'd think she was discussing weekend yoga. "Of course," I said, cutting through my steak. She didn't notice how slowly I chewed, how I watched her fingers wrap around the glass like they used to wrap around my hand when we were still real. She didn't notice how I stopped refilling her glass halfway through dinner, or how my eyes lingered on the candle wax sliding down the holder like time finally melting into something I could hold. No, Sandra only noticed that I didn't fight, that I didn't raise my voice, that I didn't beg. And that scared her more than anything. See, there's a silence men develop after a certain age. Not apathy, not exhaustion, precision, a silence that means you've already lost me, but you're too arrogant to see it. That's the silence I gave her, the one that replaces confrontation with preparation. She kept talking about how I shouldn't make this about trust, how he reached out after a mutual friend's divorce, how they needed to close a loop. I nodded like a man nodding along to a priest at a funeral, not in belief, but because the burial was already underway. She was wearing the silver earrings I bought her for our 10th anniversary. She said she couldn't find them for years. I guess her ex's message knocked them loose. And here's the part most people don't understand. I didn't want revenge. Not that night. I wanted dignity. Quiet, uncontaminated dignity. I let her sip her wine and talk about hotel rates and weather forecasts while my stomach curled like spoiled milk. I listened. I even smiled once, because a man doesn't need to yell when he's already free. After dinner, she kissed me on the cheek like we were still pretending and disappeared upstairs to pack light. That's when I walked down to the basement, not to think, not to rage, but to begin. The drawer hadn't been touched in years, hidden behind a dusty box of holiday ornaments and a cracked snow globe that used to play Silent Night. Fitting. I unlocked it. Inside was everything I needed. The password list I kept off-grid, 3 external drives, the prenup she'd forgotten she signed in 2012, and a prepaid legal retainer I'd opened quietly after her second girls' trip last fall ended with a hotel charge in the same city her ex lived. She lied about that too, something about a flight delay. Men don't forget delays like that. I took out the black binder, the one labeled if, not when, not maybe, just if. While she folded sundresses upstairs, I transferred key files from my laptop to an encrypted stick drive. My breathing stayed steady. My hands didn't shake. I'd already grieved the version of her I married years ago. The one who used to hold my face in her hands and say she'd never leave me doubting. But if you think this story's about heartbreak, it's not. It's about clarity. Because every man with a backbone, and I mean a real one, not the social media performative type, eventually realizes something chilling. Loyalty can't be negotiated. It either is or it isn't. And Sandra? She thought my silence meant approval, that she'd fly down to Miami, share laughs with the ghost of her past, and return to a man too meek to challenge her. She forgot who taught her how to play chess. She forgot who paid for her grad school while I worked 2 jobs. She forgot that the man who builds the house always knows where the fuse box is. By the time she zipped her suitcase, I was back upstairs, on the couch, watching a rerun of a cooking show she hated. She asked me if I was okay. "Never better," I said. "Have fun reconnecting." She blinked. "You're really okay with this?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "Of course. You said it's just Miami." That was the first time she hesitated, just for a second. But it was there. If you're still reading, hit that subscribe button. More than 90% of the people scroll past or listen without subscribing. But this right here, this is what keeps the team motivated to go even deeper. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. Sandra went to bed early, claiming her flight was at 6. She didn't kiss me goodnight. That's okay. I didn't sleep either. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I had lists to update, passwords to change, financial alerts to program. The man she thought would wait patiently in a bathrobe while she found herself on the beach, he died the moment she booked that flight. And the man who replaced him, he didn't cry. He calculated. She posted it at 11:42 a.m., blurry, overfiltered, with one of those captions that tries too hard to sound casual. Pool day with the girls. I stared at the photo for exactly 4 seconds, not because I believed it, but because I wanted to admire the sheer audacity. The reflection in her oversized sunglasses gave away more than she realized. A man's arm, not just any man, the man. His tattoo still the same from when I'd seen it in an old photo album she never thought I'd browse through again. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. Credit card alert. A charge at a boutique beachfront hotel in Miami I'd never heard of. I logged into the banking portal. She hadn't even tried to use her own card. She'd used our joint card, like I was financing her nostalgia tour. I took a sip of coffee and waited. Another ping, this one unexpected. A notification from an old app, the fitness tracker I'd set up for her years ago when we used to do 5Ks together. Back when she pretended to like running to impress me, she never unlinked the account. Most people forget these things. Most people don't expect them to matter. The location tagged her in a suite booked under his last name. Not hers, not ours, his. I didn't throw the phone, I didn't scream, I didn't call her. I stood up, walked down the hallway, took the framed wedding photo off the wall, the one from our vineyard ceremony, her laughing in the wind, veil tangled in the trees like a warning, and I placed it face down on the guest bed. Then I walked to my office, pulled out an old contact book, found a number I hadn't dialed in over a decade, my first business partner, Darren. We hadn't spoken since the split. He went corporate, I stayed lean, no falling out, just distance. But I knew he still had the connections, the kind you don't advertise on LinkedIn. It rang once. He picked up. Malcolm. Hey man, I need a recommendation. Discreet forensic accountant. Pause. You okay? I laughed. I'm not angry. That's what's got me concerned. He didn't ask anything else. Just gave me a name, a number, and a piece of advice I'd later realize was priceless. Don't react. Build. I wrote it down. Took a breath. Looked around the house, the one I renovated mostly by hand. Every floorboard, every damn fixture had a story. Some I loved, some I was now actively erasing. I wasn't heartbroken. I was embarrassed. Not because she cheated, though let's stop sugarcoating it, that's what it was, but because I spent years ignoring the obvious, like when she insisted on keeping a separate guest phone for freelance clients, or when she suddenly took an interest in Botox and salsa classes after a decade of hating both. Or the biggest tell of all, when she started reconnecting with old college friends and kept locking her screen every time I entered the room, said it was a surprise she was planning for my birthday. My birthday came and went. The only surprise was a gas station card and a cold steak. So no, I wasn't shocked. I was late, but not too late. Because what Sandra didn't know, what she never knew, was that while she was boarding her little escape flight with her ex and calling it closure, I was building a silent, airtight exit plan that didn't require drama. It required data. And now I had it. I sat down and started the checklist. Remove Sandra from the Amex. Begin transition of brokerage assets to my solo account. Verify prenup status with family attorney. Schedule appointment with accountant Darren recommended. Revoke medical power of attorney clause. Pull security footage access logs. Each item I checked off didn't feel like revenge. It felt like sanity. She wanted emotional clarity. She was about to get it, measured in dollars, access, and silence. I spent the rest of the day transferring files, backing up photos, the few worth keeping, and scanning documents. When the silence in the house got too loud, I played Coltrane, not to soothe, to sharpen. This wasn't war. This was excavation, digging out the bones of something already dead. And if you're still imagining this is a story of a man who'll eventually forgive and forget, let me gently correct you. There's no forgiveness here, only blueprint. Sandra always thought the quiet ones were the easiest to manipulate. She forgot quiet also means calculated. By the time Sandra ordered her second mojito on a rooftop bar in South Beach, I was in a walnut-paneled office overlooking a parking lot, signing away her future. Not with spite, with a black ink pen and a 10-year-old prenup I'd kept in a fireproof box, along with a few other things she thought were clutter. It wasn't a dramatic scene. No yelling, no slamming of doors, just fluorescent lighting, the hum of a copier in the hallway, and the scent of stale legal pads. A trust amendment is about as romantic as a colonoscopy, but it was necessary, surgical, 2 documents. The first removed Sandra as a primary beneficiary on the family trust. It had been set up back when I still believed forever meant something outside of wedding vows and cemetery plots. The second reinstated my sister's kids, twins who actually send me thank you cards and once tried to fix my printer at Christmas. My attorney, Ellis, a man who rarely flinched even when clients cried in his office, glanced up. "You're sure?" he asked. "She's already gone," I said. "This is just paperwork." He nodded like he'd heard that line before. I guess he had. What Sandra didn't know, what she never bothered to ask, was that the trust wasn't some passive bank account. It held partial shares in 2 commercial buildings, a royalties stream from a licensing agreement I'd brokered back in 2014, and a digital rights catalog that paid out quarterly from a ghostwritten book deal. Not huge money, but enough to matter, enough that she'd counted on it for someday. Well, someday got canceled. I also started the process of retitling assets. The vintage Mustang I rebuilt with my uncle, no longer in the joint garage agreement. The property in Vermont she never liked because it smelled like trees, reclassified under a holding company with a P.O. box in Albany. I changed the passwords to the house security system, moved my medical records into a solo cloud vault, and closed the life insurance policy she never realized she wasn't paying premiums on anymore. It wasn't rage. It was risk mitigation. Sandra thought I was at home brooding, maybe sitting on the edge of the bed like some 90s drama husband, nursing a scotch and waiting for her to text, and she had no idea I was at the bank, updating beneficiaries, or on the phone with the brokerage, confirming that the automatic monthly transfer to her creative fund account had been paused indefinitely. I even walked through the house with a trash bag and removed things she wouldn't miss, but I wouldn't leave. The carved chess set from Prague, the hand-painted mug from our trip to Santa Fe. She hated the desert anyway. The brass key from our first apartment. Framed, but cracked. It wasn't cruelty. It was curation. What I left behind would look familiar. Comfortable even, but hollow. Like those staged homes they show to potential buyers. Nice on the surface, empty in the cabinets. Back in Miami, she posted, need another photo. Caption, "Sunsets make everything better." It was a stock quote she'd copy-pasted from some influencer she followed. I knew because I reverse searched it. Sandra always did think appearances were more important than substance. She used to tease me for watching documentaries. Said I had a retirement brain. Well, that retirement brain just restructured her future into a very different forecast. And here's the thing most people don't talk about. The moment you stop begging to be chosen, everything sharpens. Decisions stop feeling scary. They start feeling clean. I didn't text her, didn't ask who she was with, didn't warn her. Why would I? She wasn't my partner anymore. She was an algorithm I debugged. The final step that night was writing one email to our family accountant. Simple subject line, trust amendment confirmation. Short, polite, final. Then I shut my laptop and poured a glass of iced tea. Not whiskey, not wine. I didn't need to numb anything. I just needed hydration. There's clarity in clean decisions, and clarity is thirsty work. Sandra wouldn't feel it yet. Not through the haze of beach cocktails and curated selfies. But a current had shifted. Quiet, deep, untraceable to the eye. She just didn't know she was already downstream. She strutted up the front steps like she was walking back into a movie scene. Some triumphant return from a me-time getaway. New tan lines, white sundress. That smug Miami glow people wear when they think the world stayed paused in their absence. Except this world didn't pause. It pivoted. Sandra pulled her roller bag up the stone path, sunglasses still on, keys in hand. She tapped the code into the front door keypad. Nothing. She frowned. Tried again, slower this time, like maybe the digits forgot her rhythm. Still nothing. She muttered something. I couldn't hear through the ring cam, but I bet it rhymed with "what the hell," and tapped the bell. It rang, but no one came. She called my phone, straight to voicemail. Then she stepped back and finally noticed something. The doormat. Different. Our old one, the one that said, "Welcome-ish, depends who you are," gone. In its place, a plain black mat with no greeting, no joke, just a rectangle. You'd be surprised how much silence a doormat can scream. I watched from my office across town, sipping my coffee, no rush, no reaction. She'd get in eventually. I'd left the backsliding door unlocked for one reason. I wanted her to choose to walk around, to cross her own line. And she did. She wheeled her bag through the dewy grass, heels sinking into mud she hadn't counted on, and slid open the back door like she owned the place. Inside, everything smelled like pine cleaner and freshly burned bridges. Her heels clicked across the floor, echoing louder than usual because something else was gone too, the rug from the entryway. She bought it during our trip to Charleston, claimed it tied the room together. I always thought it looked like a dinner napkin that lost a fight. She called out, "Malcolm?" Silence. She moved into the living room, then paused. Her framed art prints? Missing. The crystal bowl from her aunt? Boxed. The throw pillows she insisted had personality? Gone, replaced by the generic gray ones we'd used before she upgraded the place with her sense of style, which always smelled a little like superiority. The real punch landed upstairs. She reached the master bedroom door, opened it. Empty, no bed, no sheets, no dresser, no framed photo of us at that mountain overlook, just bare carpet and faint indentations where our life used to rest. Down the hall, the guest room light was on. Her suitcase from the last trip already unpacked, her travel-size shampoo in the bathroom, folded pajamas on the bed, a subtle but surgical relocation. She wasn't being welcomed back. She was being contained. Sandra's face changed. Not panic, not yet, but the first flicker of wrong, that offbeat rhythm in the chest when something isn't just off, it's planned. She stormed down to the garage, tried the key card. The light blinked red. She hit the garage button, dead. Then her phone buzzed, a silent notification. Motion detected. Kitchen. She looked up. There on the island was a sealed envelope. White. No handwriting. No embellishments. Just her name, printed in a serif font. She opened it, read the first line, then the second. Her lips moved silently, reading. Then she dropped the paper. She bent down, picked it up again, read it twice more, slower, because it didn't yell. It didn't accuse. It didn't explain. It just declared, one line. You return to a house, not a home. The latter moved on. No signature, no date. Just that. She didn't cry, not yet. She's not built for immediate consequences. Sandra's the type who argues with reality until it forgets its point, but the cracks were forming. She checked the fridge. No oat milk, no wine, just filtered water and a half-eaten rotisserie chicken I'd bought intentionally because she hated the smell. She opened the closet under the stairs. Her seasonal coats. Gone. Checked the mail basket. Nothing addressed to her. She tried logging into the shared Netflix, password changed. Even the damn smart speaker didn't respond to her voice profile. She asked it to play her playlist. It replied, "Sorry, I don't recognize this user." That's when it hit her. This wasn't a cold shoulder. This wasn't pouting. This wasn't some dramatic husband making a point. This was architecture. Deliberate, clean-cut separation. And for the first time, Sandra, who always thought silence was surrender, realized it might have been strategy. She sat down at the kitchen island. Not with grace, with weight. That tan was starting to look out of place. That dress too white for the room she walked into, because Sandra had come back expecting to find a sulking man she could charm, manipulate, or outlast. What she found was a life that no longer included her. The second envelope was smaller, tucked in the silverware drawer. She found it while looking for a wine opener, because of course her first move after reading the note on the kitchen island was to drink. That's her ritual. Crisis, Sauvignon Blanc, confusion, Pinot, betrayal, rosé preferably cold. She opened the drawer, saw the envelope labeled simply Sandra, and this one wasn't printed. It was handwritten, in my clean, deliberate print. I knew she'd find it. I even angled it slightly on top of the corkscrew to make sure. Inside, a single slip of paper, no decoration, no letterhead, just the sentence. I no longer share a life with someone who flies backward for closure. That's it. No signature, no preamble, not even a period. She stared at it like it was written in a language only she should understand but somehow didn't. Flies backward. She read it aloud 3 times, each slower than the last. By the 4th reading, the realization hit. There'd be no confrontation, no staged fight, no dramatic apology to manipulate her way back in. Just that line, that precision cut. So naturally she did what modern narcissists do best. She took it online. Sandra posted on Facebook first. Some long, vaguely poetic paragraph about miscommunication, gaslighting, and the cold cruelty of silence. She used phrases like emotional withholding and weaponized detachment, cried about how she just needed space to process the past, and was now being discarded for seeking honesty. But that didn't get traction, so she upped the ante. Screenshots, TikTok, Instagram stories. She even filmed a teary-eyed reel from the guest room, lit perfectly with a soft filter and sad piano music overlay, captioned, "When your husband replaces conversation with cruelty." She held up the note, tried to make it the smoking gun, but the internet, it's not built for curated victimhood anymore. Not the way it used to be, not when you're sloppy, because someone, some beautiful, vengeful internet sleuth, zoomed in on the photo in her sunglasses from the Miami trip, posted the original, circled the reflection of her ex's arm, matched the tattoo, cross-referenced it with the hotel tag from the fitness tracker she forgot was still connected. Another person found the credit card charge data she accidentally exposed by posting her Starbucks receipt, which included the name of the hotel, the same one her ex had posted a story from 2 days earlier. Same furniture, same view, then it spread. Reddit threads, duets on TikTok, reaction videos, stitch after stitch with people dragging her fake vulnerability through digital mud. And the comments. That's not emotional abuse, that's called standards. Bro didn't even yell, he just updated his software and uninstalled the virus. She flew back to a version of the relationship that no longer existed. That's poetic justice. This isn't a breakup. This is a system update. He patched the vulnerability. Men, real ones, older ones, tired ones, flooded the thread with solidarity, not celebration, recognition. They saw the note, understood the restraint, the surgical nature of the message, the absolute absence of performative rage. And they knew this wasn't about control, it was about escape. But Sandra, she couldn't handle that. She started replying to comments, arguing, posting follow-ups. Context. Clarification. She said things like, "I wasn't cheating, I was processing," claimed she had every right to explore emotional territory, and that I was punishing her for being honest. Each reply just made it worse. The mockery escalated. Someone created a meme of her note with the caption, "Pilot Sandra took off for closure, crash-landed in accountability." Another account remixed her tearful reel into a parody with auto-tuned crying and a slow zoom on her face every time she said manipulation. Within 72 hours, the hashtag had backward foreclosure had 80,000 hits. People were printing the phrase on mugs. I didn't respond, didn't post, didn't even click. I knew she'd be watching my silence more obsessively than if I'd spoken. That every hour without a reply felt like another brick wall going up between her and any chance at re-entry. She tried texting my sister, got left on read, called our mutual friends. Most didn't answer. One did, and simply said, "You should have flown forward, not back." Sandra thought she could paint herself as the wounded soul, thought people would line up to defend the wife who just needed a few days to think. But people weren't buying it anymore. The world has had enough of tourists and loyalty who come back with souvenirs of betrayal. The silence she feared, it was no longer personal. It was public, widening, permanent, and no filter could hide that. It started with the coffee. A cappuccino to be exact, double shot, oat milk, extra foam, no lid. Sandra placed it on the counter at her favorite boutique cafe, the kind of place that spelled espresso with an accent and charged extra for ambiance. She tapped her card on the reader, declined. She laughed loudly, the performative kind, as if to say, clearly a mistake. She tapped again, declined. The barista, trying too hard not to look smug, offered a quiet, "Do you want to try another card?" Sandra smiled, tight-lipped, pulled out her backup, her just-in-case card, the one she hadn't used since Christmas. Declined. That's when the crack started, not a full collapse. Not yet. But the flicker, the hairline fracture across her face, masked quickly by a flustered "must be the Wi-Fi." She paid in cash, tossed the receipt into her bag with too much force, and practically hissed her way out of the building. She called the bank from her car, already gearing up for a tirade. The rep confirmed the news. Joint checking. Closed. Authorization removed. She asked about the joint savings. Also closed, the woman said. transferred in accordance with the standing separation provisions. Sandra didn't know what that meant, so she drove, fast, annoyed, buzzing with confusion, to the actual bank, the one with brick walls and awkwardly cheery greeters. She demanded to speak with someone senior. They brought her into a glass-walled office. That's when the real humiliation began. Per the agreement you co-signed in 2012, the banker explained, sliding over a copy of a document she hadn't seen in years. Your husband retained unilateral control of the accounts in the event of a pre-divorce financial realignment. Since there's no filed divorce but clear separation of cohabitation, he executed that clause. He can't just take everything, she snapped. He didn't, the banker replied calmly. He just took what was never legally yours. The words didn't land right away. She leaned back, stunned, then tried to pivot. What about the retirement account? The banker checked. Already separated, his share reallocated, yours remains untouched. She didn't even have a retirement account. She'd spent the last decade dipping into the joint one anytime she wanted a reset. Yoga retreats, digital detoxes, random online courses, and things she never finished. Sandra left the bank parking lot and sped home, heart racing faster than her thoughts. She needed her car, to clear her head, except when she tapped the fob to unlock the door. It didn't respond. She clicked again. Nothing. Then she saw the sticker. New registration, new tags, and a printed copy of a lease transfer taped to the windshield inside. Her name, now gone. Malcolm's name, sole proprietor. The buyout was already paid. The balance cleared. It was his. Everything was his. She yanked open her purse and called her lawyer, Linda, the one she hadn't needed in years but kept on speed dial just in case. Well, it was just in case now. He's frozen everything, Sandra said before even saying hello. Accounts, car, the joint funds, everything. Linda sounded less surprised than she should have. Okay, I'll need specifics. I just told you specifics. Can he do this? Silence. Paper shuffling. Then the words that finally cracked her. Yes, and based on the clause you signed, he already has. What clause? The post-nup. There was no post-nup. There was, Linda replied. You signed it after the business refinance, remember? Right before you left for that Bali retreat. Sandra's stomach twisted. She had signed something. Something she hadn't read closely. Malcolm had framed it as a formality for the bank. She was too busy packing and posting boomerangs of beach hammocks to care. He'd handed her the document between flights. She'd signed it on a layover. You're telling me he used that against me? I'm telling you he didn't use anything, Linda said. He enforced what was already agreed to. That's different. Sandra hung up mid-sentence. Her palms were sweating, not from heat, from the realization that her safety net hadn't just been pulled. It had never been hers. She'd been walking across a rope bridge built by someone else, one who knew exactly when to cut the support without making it dramatic. And now she was dangling. That night, she tried to log into the family budget spreadsheet, gone. Tried to open the joint Dropbox folder, archived. Tried to FaceTime Malcolm, blocked. She stared at the little red exclamation mark next to his name like it was a symptom, like maybe her phone was broken, like maybe reality was lagging, but it wasn't. It was responding exactly the way it was designed to. And what hit her hardest wasn't that Malcolm had locked her out. It was that he'd done it without ever needing to raise his voice. Sandra always believed social currency was her safety net. Not money, though she liked that too, but people. Appearances, connections, dinners she hosted with too much floral centerpiece, brunches that weren't about eggs but about power. Being liked was her sport. Being right was her trophy. She'd spent years cultivating friendships the way some people groom hedges, clipped, shaped, performative. So when her marriage began unraveling, when she unraveled it, she expected the net to catch her. She started small. A text to Melissa and Darren, the couple we used to double date with every few months, the kind who always smiled too wide and told stories in tandem like they'd rehearsed them in the car. Sandra messaged Melissa, "Rough week. Can we talk? I just need a friend right now." No reply. She waited 3 hours, then tried again. "I'm really struggling. Please don't ghost me." Still nothing. So she widened the net. Group chat with her book club. the one she only half attended but loved being tagged in. She posted a vague quote and followed it up with, "You think you know someone, and then they vanish emotionally, but the truth always comes out eventually." Like, from a bot account. Then silence. Sandra didn't panic yet. She pivoted, messaged Callie, her old roommate from undergrad who once flew across the country to attend our wedding. "Need someone who remembers me before all of this. I feel like I'm being erased." Callie replied 8 hours later. "Hey." I saw the thread and the screenshots. I don't really know what to say. Sandra tried to recover. "Everyone's misunderstanding it. I wasn't cheating. I just needed closure. Malcolm's manipulating the narrative by staying silent." The typing bubble came up, then vanished. No reply. She called her sister next. Julia. They weren't close, but blood is supposed to be default loyalty. Sandra launched into her story the moment Julia picked up, gave her the whole Miami Meets emotional introspection monologue she'd clearly rehearsed. Julia interrupted. "Stop." "What?" "I saw the receipts. I saw the silence. You broke your own vows." There was a pause so thick it felt like static. Sandra scrambled. "You don't understand. It's not black and white. You're taking his side?" "No," Julia said. "I'm watching yours fall apart." Click. Sandra stared at her phone, still pressed to her ear even though the line was dead. She tried to bounce back, booked herself for a wine-tasting event downtown, showed up in a blazer and heels too sharp for a room full of couples clinking glasses and smiling through their teeth. She waved at two people she knew. Neither waved back. Later that week, she RSVP'd for a gallery opening she used to help organize. The email bounced back. "Invite list at capacity." Translation, "Not you anymore." Even her hairdresser canceled last minute, texted some excuse about her dog. Sandra saw her tagged at a concert that same night, arm in arm with someone from our side of the aisle. Each day, her orbit shrank. Each conversation dried before it could start. She scrolled her socials obsessively, watching people live lives she used to narrate. But now, no one tagged her. No one asked where she'd been. And when she posted one last desperate quote, "Sometimes people leave not because they're weak, but because they're strong enough to know what they deserve," it got 2 likes, both from strangers, one of them a spam account. Sandra shut off her phone for a week. The silence wasn't just Malcolm's now. It had multiplied, echoed, become ambient. The very room she walked into felt colder, not because people yelled, because they didn't even look up. And what stung most? No one publicly attacked her, no viral call-outs, no organized cancellation, just nothing. They saw the receipts. They saw the man who never spoke ill of her, never went online, never played the victim. They saw the absence and made their choice, quietly, just like him. It had been 26 days since Sandra last heard Malcolm's voice. Not that she hadn't tried. A few calls, 3 emails, 1 letter dropped into the mailbox in a moment of weakness. Handwritten, the envelope smudged from a tear she'd never admit to shedding. She'd carefully crafted it to sound apologetic but not desperate, regretful but still in control, the kind of note someone writes when they still believe they have bargaining power. She never got a response. She kept checking his socials even though she knew he rarely posted. He hated curated life, said it made everyone dishonest and no one interesting. But she checked anyway, like an addict waiting for a dealer who'd already moved zip codes. What she didn't expect was the photo. It didn't come from Malcolm. It came from Greg, a mutual friend. Well, formerly mutual, one of Malcolm's closest, the kind of friend Sandra used to call your emotional support lumberjack because of his beard and permanent flannel. Greg posted a single picture, no filter, no hashtags, no caption, just a candid shot of 2 men standing knee-deep in a river near a cabin, fishing rods in hand, a golden retriever between them, tongue out, ears up. Fall leaves framed the background like a painting you'd hang in a therapist's office. But it wasn't the scene that cracked her, it was him, Malcolm, leaner, tan, but not the performative kind, not the kind he used to fake during dinner parties or anniversary photos. This was a relaxed, earned smile. A man who'd slept well, eaten well, laughed hard, his beard trimmed just enough to say, "I don't need to try," and his eyes, clear, focused, peaceful. He looked 10 years younger and 20 pounds lighter. And nowhere in that frame was there any hint that Sandra had ever existed. No tan line from a missing ring, no tension in his shoulders, not even the usual sadness she used to see in his smile when she'd dismiss his stories or roll her eyes during his lectures on antique wood joinery. He looked unbothered, whole, replaced. Sandra stared at the photo until her phone screen dimmed, then she tapped it back on, zoomed in. It wasn't just that he looked better, it was that everything around him did too. The dog, she'd never seen it before. Probably his now. She hated dogs. Said they were too needy, too hairy, too messy. Malcolm used to nod and agree, but in that photo, he held the leash like it belonged there. She checked the comments. Not many. A few friends laughing about finally getting him out of the house, a couple of likes from people with last names she didn't recognize. No tags, no mentions, no breadcrumbs for her to follow. It was almost cruel, a clean, living snapshot of a life that had erased her so efficiently, it looked like she'd never touched it. That's when the shaking started. Not sobbing, shaking. The kind of tremor that doesn't come from sadness, but from the body realizing that hope just got its throat cut. She tried to laugh at first, told herself he'd probably staged it, that it was a fluke, that he looked tired if you really look at the eyes. But she looked again, and the lie collapsed. Because Malcolm didn't look tired, he looked done. The finality of it landed harder than any slammed door or divorce paper. It was the absence of grief, the absence of performance. He hadn't just survived her, he'd transcended her. And in that moment, Sandra realized the most devastating thing wasn't that he left. It was that he didn't miss her. He didn't need closure, didn't need revenge, didn't even need to explain. He just moved, quietly, efficiently, like a man turning off a light before going to bed. And she was the bulb left burning in an empty room. She spent the rest of the day scrolling through old photos, vacations, birthdays, selfies she used to stage by pulling his arm closer. Every image felt faker now, like props from a show that had long since been canceled. That night she sat in the dark guest room, still filled with the echo of her own choices, and stared at her screen, the photo still open. The man in it had no idea she was watching, and that hurt worse than if he had. She waited until after midnight. The guest room was still, too still, the kind of stillness that hums, the kind that makes your thoughts sound like sirens. Her wine glass sat untouched beside her, condensation bleeding into a ring on the nightstand, proof of her second failed attempt that night to calm herself down. She'd scrolled through his photo at least 30 times, zoomed in, zoomed out, imagined herself just outside the frame, walking toward him with an apology rehearsed, one of those Hollywood scenes where the past bends under the weight of a well-timed "I didn't know what I had." But real life doesn't come with background scores. Her thumbs hovered over his name in her contacts. Malcolm, still saved under husband even now. She hadn't changed it, not because she forgot, because changing it would mean admitting what she couldn't undo. One ring, two, voicemail. She hung up fast, too embarrassed to leave one, waited, watched the clock, called again, same result. So she texted, "I made a mistake. Please, can we talk?" She hit send and stared at the screen like it was a prayer book. Seconds passed, then minutes. The dots didn't appear, no typing bubble, no response, until she saw it. Read, blue check, time-stamped, 10 seconds ago. He saw it. Her chest tightened, a flicker of something stupid, hope, lighting a corner of her brain she thought had gone cold. She sat up straighter, started forming a second text. "Malcolm, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was confused. I never meant to." Before she could type another word, his reply came. Just one sentence. "I already did." That was it. She blinked, read it again, and then again. 3 words that weighed more than any speech she'd prepared. Not angry, not cruel, no insult, no accusation, just the truth. He already did. He already talked. He already listened. He already processed. He already let go. She stared at the screen like it might glitch, like the words might rearrange themselves into something softer, something she could work with. But the letters didn't move. The message sat there like a gravestone. No follow-up, no typing bubble, no 3 dots, no loophole. Her fingers slipped and the phone fell from her lap, hitting the carpet with a dull thud. She didn't reach for it, didn't breathe, just sat frozen, hollowed out by the realization that this wasn't a cliffhanger. It was a period. She had made the call, expecting a bridge, but he gave her a door, one he'd already closed. Behind her, the walls of the guest room pressed in tighter. The air felt thinner, the pillows too firm, the bed too wide. This wasn't a home. It was a staging area for someone else's departure. And the silence, this time it wasn't strategy, it was final. Because you don't follow up when you've said everything. And Malcolm? He said everything with 3 words. She tried calling again, blocked. Tried messaging from a different number, blocked. Even the email bounced back, auto reply. This inbox is no longer monitored. She dropped her head into her hands, not in anger, not in shock, in devastation. Because for the first time, Sandra understood that Malcolm's silence wasn't a punishment. It was a response. And she was 10 steps too late to hear the question. It had been 4 months. 4 months since the message, 3 since she'd stopped trying to get through, 2 since she moved out of the house and into a short-term lease with bland white walls and an air mattress that deflated every other night. 1 since she finally stopped blaming everyone else. By then, the fallout had faded. The online drama cooled, the comment sections moved on to some other messy marriage unraveling in public. Her name no longer trended, her DMs stopped buzzing, even the pity invitations stopped arriving. And in that vacuum, the truth finally made itself at home. Sandra was no longer relevant, and that more than anything hollowed her out. But the final cut, the one that didn't bleed, just carved, came on a Sunday afternoon at the local craft market, the kind of place she used to mock, called it midlife cosplay, all that hand-carved furniture and organic soap and wood-fired pizza served by men in aprons who thought shaving was optional. She almost didn't go, but she was bored, lonely. She told herself she was going for the walking, for the weather. The market was set up in the park, sunlight leaking through the trees, kids running between booths, that smell of sawdust and lavender that made everything feel too peaceful. She wandered past stands of pottery, leather belts, artisanal honey. Then she saw it. The sign read Second Grain, the logo, a minimalist wood shaving curling into the shape of an ampersand, and behind the stand, Malcolm, leaner, still, calm in a way that didn't beg to be noticed. He was wiping down a handmade walnut box, the kind he used to say he'd make when he had time. Apparently he had time now. He was smiling. Not wide, not performative, just content. He laughed at something someone said, an older couple browsing his work. He handed a child a small carved toy without charging, and then she saw her, a woman beside him, mid-40s maybe, natural hair pulled back, no makeup, no rings, no jewelry, just jeans, a chambray shirt, and the kind of posture that only comes from never having to compete with chaos. She wasn't flashy, wasn't posing. She was present, and Malcolm, his arm was around her shoulder, lightly, naturally, the kind of gesture that said, I'm here, and so are you, and that's all we need. Sandra stood frozen, everything around her blurred. The wind pressed against her dress like it wanted to move her, but she couldn't lift her feet, not even when a stroller bumped her heel and the mother apologized. Malcolm glanced in her direction. Just once. His eyes met hers. No surprise, no disdain. He just nodded. Polite, clean, like you'd acknowledge someone you used to know in passing, someone whose name you filed away with other irrelevant trivia. Then he turned back to the woman, back to his table, back to the life that had no room for what came before. Sandra turned, finally, walked away without buying anything, not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't bear to be around all that wholeness. Her shoes echoed on the concrete, too loud. She didn't cry. Not then. That came later, in the car, where the air was too hot and the seat too stiff, and her reflection in the mirror looked like someone who had almost been loved enough to stay, but hadn't. That market wasn't the end of a chapter. It was the confirmation of a truth she'd avoided since Miami. Malcolm hadn't punished her. He had erased her, quietly, completely. And in doing so, he'd written a story where she wasn't the villain or the victim. She was simply missing.